Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joining me today is Mark Malekish from the Fitchburg Fire Department. You're fire inspector, educator, and firefighter, and multitasker.
Thanks.
Mark, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back.
We are talking about open burning is the topic at hand. And at the time that we're recording this, because this will be archived forever, Mark, it's very dry conditions. So it goes with the timing right now, as it's kind of been an interesting winter, a little bit warmer than usual. But when we're thinking about open burning, I would say we have a very large rural area, we have a really large city area, and rules have been like sort of different but the same but not. But overall, from the fire department's sake, let's just talk about the open burning in general. If somebody wants to burn something, what do we need to do?
Sure. So in the city of Fitchburg, we have an urban service area, and then we have our rural area. And that's how we differentiate the rules between what's allowable and what isn't in terms of open burning. So I'll start with the urban service area. Generally speaking, no open burning in the urban service area. And just so that I can maybe identify what open burning is usually considered a land management tool. It's burning prairie grasses, it's burning down trees or fence rows or things like that, right? In the urban service area, we generally don't allow that, like I said. What is allowed within the urban service area as a general rule, we're not enforcing fire pits. So if you're in your backyard and you're having a fire with friends and all of that, as long as you're being responsible, we're not going to get too worried about that. Cooking fires and ceremonial fires also sort of fall into that category.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about that backyard fire, or maybe it's a rolling pit, I don't know what those are actually called. What are those rolling pits, like the fire rolling pits with a cage? They're in a cage with a cover?
Yeah, so we just call them manufactured fire pits.
You
can go to Home Depot, Menards, whatever store you want to, and pick one up. Generally, we're not going to get too excited about that. It's a great way for people to get together and people to enjoy, each other's companies on a nice night, right? When it becomes a problem is when it becomes a nuisance, or if you're building a fire that is much too big for the container to handle.
Yeah, I think of it as if you were stuffing a bunch of brush in there. So let's just say you were taking leaves and brush and sticks and all these things. You're really over the limit, I would say, compared to a campfire where you're throwing in a couple of logs and having at it.
That's exactly right. So yard cleanup really isn't something that you should be doing in a fire pit at all. It's going to create a lot of smoke. That smoke is going to create a lot of nuisance for people around you. It also runs the risk of that fire sort of not being able to be controlled by the container that it's in, right? So generally speaking, if you're going to use a fire pit, go buy some nice, clean, dry wood and have your backyard fire and enjoy a couple of cocktails or whatever it is you do with that. Just please do it safely and like I said, with respect to your neighbors. You and I had a conversation off camera about neighbors, right? If you're going to have that kind of event and you're going to have a fire pit out in your backyard, make sure that you talk to your neighbors. Make sure that they're okay with it. If they have asthma, if they have other health conditions and the wind is going to blow it right in their kitchen window, make sure you've had that conversation with them, and maybe a fire pit isn't the right time. That's not the right time to have that fire. Yeah. So most of the complaints that we get are strictly that they're neighbor versus neighbor issues, and they can be resolved just by those neighbors having a conversation.
Now, it's important to state here that you're not endorsing fire or, having fires in the backyard or anything like that. So I want to be clear here that that is not the intent here. The intent is fire safety and prevention and and making good choices. Yep. But note that as it stands today and where we are with ordinance, generally speaking.
Via the current ordinance, you actually are supposed to call in for a permit for those. That said, it's common practice. It's happening out there. We understand it and we recognize it. So we're trying to adapt to what's happening out in the world. Really, when COVID-19 hit, outdoor fire pits sort of took off, and they became the norm because people weren't supposed to go anywhere, and they needed a way to get outside of their four walls because they were probably driving each other crazy.
It's true.
So we're not endorsing it, but if you're going to do it responsibly.
And there are resources out there that talk about how to conduct a fire, appropriate fire, campfire, that sort of thing. Great resources out there which you can check out. I do want to go back to the open burning though, and the permits that are required. So if you're outside the urban service area,
sure.
And the rules are a little bit different, but we're still talking about permit here. So hard switch here from a campfire to what you can burn and not burn.
So like I said, the open burning is generally a land management tool. Outside of the urban service area, difficult for me to say, that's common practice, especially out on farms. It's a way to manage, like I said, fence rows or field cleanup or those things. If you're going to do that, we ask that you call into our fire station. When you call in, let us know where the burn is going to be located, what you're going to be burning, what are the hours, right? So we want to see these fires out by dusk, no burning at night. We want to make sure the wind conditions are correct. At the opening of this, you mentioned current conditions. There's a website out there where we check it every day, and we distribute information to our crews as briefing about whether or not burn permits will be allowed. A great example is today. Today's a higher fire hazard day, so we've restricted open burning. It's just not safe to do it. The winds are too high and the conditions are too dry. So, but generally speaking, call into that phone line, talk to somebody, they'll take some information from you, and that helps us meter our response out there too. We don't want to go screaming across the city for something that is a known open burn.
Absolutely.
Right. Another aspect of that is places where you have agriculture, or not agricultural, environmental features as part of your landscape. So a lot of times what you'll see is a private company that will come out, and for a fee, they'll manage, if you need to burn off an acre of prairie grass or whatever it happens to be. They'll do that for you. And when they do that, they reach out to us. They submit a written burn plan that has several aspects to it, including having their own water source, making sure that they've notified neighbors, making sure that they're only going to burn on days where it's appropriate via the weather conditions. And then they keep that written permit in hand. That's a much more formalized process.
And they're professionals too, right? I mean, you're hiring a professional company, and they're certified in many different aspects. Doesn't mean that they still don't do it. And it's a good comment to that too, that we contract with a lot of prairie restoration companies that do controlled burns. They reach out to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We want them to. And those guys are great to work with. A lot of them work for fire departments already, or some of them come from DNR hotshot teams where they do controlled burns, or they respond to prairie fires, wildfires, whatever it is. They respond to those as part of their day job, and then on their days off, they do these control burns. Yeah. So it's a common, and it's pretty safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, and not giving you a lot of time here at the end to get to this, but in the fire safety aspect of any time you're dealing with fires and starting a fire, we get into that gray area of, and we see a lot of joking videos out there, or things that are like, oh, let's pour some gasoline on this and let it go, or
right.
or something that's going to blow. Tends to end up you're ending on the wrong side of being part of with a fire. So fire safety in general, just generally speaking, we don't want to play with gas or play with some accelerants that are
absolutely not. Treat the fire with the respect that it needs, right? It's dangerous. It can get away from you in a hurry via a variety of ways, right? So always make sure that you're treating that fire with absolute respect. You can almost think of it as a tool, right? If that's how you're going to get rid of this brush pile on the farm, try to light it in a way that you're upwind, so it's not going to catch fire and come right at you. Make sure that you've got a water source near you, and like you said, don't use accelerants, don't use flammable liquids, and that applies to everybody, right? There was just a news story today from a birthday party down south, southern Wisconsin, where a bunch of kids had gotten together and they had a bonfire to celebrate somebody's birthday. Well, right now there's a 19-year-old girl who's in the hospital recovering from third-degree burns because somebody else threw some ignitable liquid or whatever it was on the fire to get it going, right? A couple of years ago, up in Pulaski, Wisconsin, somebody threw a 55-gallon drum of diesel and gasoline mix, and they're still going through the court system via the civil and several different lawsuits to get to the bottom of that. And actually, I think one or two did die on that one.
Yeah.
So, just don't use the flammables. It's not worth it.
Well, a lot of information here. I encourage you to check out our website, fitchburgwi.gov. Go to the fire department's page. They've got great resources there. Actually has everything on the open burning permit, what you need for the permit. Certainly you can call this guy and he'll answer the questions that you may have, or anybody on the fire department for that matter. They'll get you. They'll get to you somehow and share information. We appreciate breaking this down. We want everybody to be safe. That's the goal here.
Yep, and if there's questions, like you said, call the fire department. We're happy to answer them, and we're happy to work through the problems with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark.
You bet. Thank you.